Hello and welcome to Louis Philippe in Pursuit of Excellence. My guest today is a world champion, but more important to me, he's an alumni of my own alma mater, Don Bosco High School in Chennai, Loyola College, and a degree in commerce. I think that's probably the easiest way to introduce you, Vishy. Vishy, great to see you. Vishy Anand is my guest today.
Thank you so much. And there's the railway connection as well.
Of course, there's a railway connection as well, because both our dads were in the Southern Railways here. So there's a very strong Chennai connection, railway connection. It's great to see you.
Pleasure.
Obviously you followed your career forever, but let's go back a little bit and talk about your early years, because you're growing up here as a third sibling, right?
That's right.
You're the youngest in your family.
That's right.
What made you take up chess?
Very simple. My mother started it all. So, I think I asked her to teach me how to play. And she was the chess player of the family. So she taught me the rules. At that stage, I guess she wasn't sure where this was leading. So she left it at that. But then after a few months, she noticed that I was kept going back to the game. So then the idea came that maybe I could join a chess club nearby. I joined the Michael Tal Chess Club. And that's how it got started.
Was it a challenge at that young age to be able to, chess it's a complicated game, it's obviously extremely mental. Was it a challenge for you right away?
The thing is, in those days, it was not that easy to find a playing partner. It wasn't that easy to learn how to play chess. In fact, I remember my mother saying that she didn't know which chess book she should buy. She had no real idea how to go about this. But she decided that the main thing was, as long as I was playing and I was happy, that was fine. Because we weren't thinking in terms of a career, or it was just a hobby, and chess was a fun hobby for me. But as I started to go along, then the books, the practice, all that started to appear.
Were your siblings involved in it as well at the time? Brother and sister?
Yes, they would take me to the club and things like that. My sister studied in Stella, which is very near the club, so there were that kind of linkage, but they didn't play chess very long. I think they dabbled in it a little bit and then they moved on. Also, they're much older than me, both more than a decade older. So by the time I was getting into chess, they were already looking for a job almost. So,
were there any other sports that you fancied at the time?
Well, I did go for my coaching classes in tennis.
Okay.
So there was one crucial year where my father got posted in the Philippines. And the first thing we did when we got there was my mother tried to find the local chess scene and hook me up in that, but also the local tennis scene. So I would go there and play tennis as well. And so these were my two hobbies, tennis and chess. When we came back, the same thing. Tennis coaching in the morning and then chess the rest of the time. But I'm not much of a morning person, so the tennis kind of dipped off slowly. And besides that, whatever I would play in the club, so badminton or swimming or table tennis.
Interesting, because as we grew up, we also played chess to some extent. Anand and my older brother was a tremendous chess player. I know he played...
Exactly, we played against each other.
Early age with you. So that was kind of interesting to have tennis and chess as part of it. And did the physical aspects of tennis, you think, helped you to a certain degree in your mental aspects of chess?
In order to sustain mental performance over a few hours, you need to be physically fit. And I'm sure the tennis helped. But I think when you do something you enjoy, then that itself is very nice. And I enjoyed the contrast, playing chess, and then later on or the next day doing some tennis instead. So the fact that I was doing chess and then tennis and then I had my studies, and mixing these things, I think works very well.
Did you have in mind that you had to go for training to the Philippines? Was that because you had a coach there that you've gotten used to?
Not at all. It was pretty serendipitous. My father got posted in an Asian Bank project, and so because he went there, we followed. And it turned out, though we had no clue at that stage, but it turned out that the Philippines was having a kind of chess boom at that point. There was this very active man called Campomanes, who was organizing a lot of events. In fact, they even had chess on television. So they would have a daily show for an hour. And what would happen was this would be for some reason, this was in the afternoons when I would be at school. So my mother would take down the whole game, whatever they showed. And at the end of the program, they would have a puzzle which you could solve. So my mother would take me through whatever they showed that day. And then both of us would solve that puzzle together and send in the entry. And that's how I started to build a collection of chess books. Because if your entry got picked out of a lot, then you got to go to the studio, speak to them, and you could pick up a chess book from their library. But because I was sending an entry every single day, or we were sending an entry every single day, I started to win quite a lot. So one day they told me to just come and said, help yourself to the library, but don't send any more entries because we need to mix it up a bit. So,
At what stage in your young career at that time, I assume you were in the early teens, even 12, 13, 14 at that age, did you feel that, yes, not only am I good at it, but, and you won junior tournaments, of course, that I can make this, sort of a long-term goal?
well, I was 9 when I was in the Philippines. So, and we came back here the very next year. I started to go back to the chess club. But then I had my breakthrough year when I was 13, when all of a sudden I started to just win everything. And I can't explain why, because I was the same person playing the same people I'd played a couple of months earlier, but suddenly I was just winning every game. And I remember this started in my summer holidays. So I won a tournament in Chennai in the club, qualified for the men's championship, the national men's championship, by doing well in 2 tournaments, the team championship and then the qualifier. And after that, it became obvious that there were many things I could aspire to. I don't know if I necessarily thought all the way to being a professional, but I thought, okay, now the titles are within reach. I can try to become an international master, then maybe a grandmaster after that. I can try to compete in the world sub-junior, world junior. So it was very exciting for me because new doors opened.
International master at 15 years old, I mean, that's unheard of, and obviously the youngest. What kind of confidence does that give you, that kind of early success?
I think it's stage by stage, because at every stage, you always find someone new who's stronger than you. And then you try to compete and get better. And then the moment you cross a certain level, then you stop looking back and you try to find new challenges. Becoming international master was a very important step because there were already a few in the country. And then the race began to become a grandmaster, which was the real prize because no one in India had become a grandmaster. That lasted about 2 years. And by the time I got my grandmaster title, I'd also become world junior champion. So suddenly, all sorts of doors started to open abroad. I mean, before I had to qualify for the official tournament so that I could get support from the sports ministry, or sometimes my parents would sponsor a trip or two. But once I became a grandmaster, and suddenly tournaments started to invite me, and things started to get very, very interesting because I could then dream of the world title even.
How big was chess at the time, as far as India was concerned, that recognition would come fast and furious? Or was it fairly slow in coming at that time?
There was a very, very small chess scene in comparison with today in those days. And even I think the broad awareness of what chess wasn't there in the public. I mean, I'm talking of sports fans who may not play chess, but at least know that it exists. Most of the time, I'd have to explain not what I did, but what the sport is like, and then explain the context, and then explain what. So it was just much longer. I was lucky in some sense with our school because we had a sports-loving vice principal, and most of the principals also. So two of them just more or less let me go and said, "We'll take care of things here with the attendance. You just play."
Well, by the way, just to sort of interrupt you there, during my day, Don Bosco, that never happened.
Yeah,
stricter, I think, at that time.
But of course, nowadays India is much, much more accepting of chess and other sports, and so it's become easier to present your case. And nowadays, people even start out thinking of sports as a career.
Did you have any sort of pushback either at home or in town, in Chennai, for example, where we both grew up, as far as, oh, he's playing chess full time at this point? Is it something that he should be doing? Is it something that he should be looking for school and college and a job? Did that come up?
No, I was very lucky in two senses. One is my parents were very open-minded to this. And again, I really feel in the 70s and 80s that my parents were very relaxed about the amount of time I was spending with chess. It was very unusual. In those days, whenever you spoke to somebody, they would say, I really wanted to do the sport, but my father kept saying, get a job. So that sort of story. But my parents were, but I also didn't make it that hard for them because the deal always unspoken was I wouldn't let my studies go. I'd find some way to combine it. So for the 10th and 12th, I actually stopped playing chess for 3 months so that I could focus on the exams. And but the 9th standard and the 11th, I got to travel a lot more. So we adjusted a bit. And in fact, at many moments in my career, I found it very useful to study. By this, I mean that at some point you hit a wall where you're not getting any better and you can't see why. And then you spend 3 months suddenly switching to your exams. And then you come back and this wall has disappeared and you start to play more freely. You can explain this in a way that you're learning concepts, but you're not able to put them into piece. And then you do something else for a while. And then when you come back, suddenly the chessboard looks a bit clearer. Something to that effect. Or maybe it's just that you're playing too much chess, you're saturated, and you need a break. And so this enforced break of school worked. But it was always understood that it would be helpful to have the sports quota apply as well. So though for my 10th and 12th, I passed the exams. I did quite well. Not as well as I might have done without chess, but it didn't really clash with my studies, I would say, till the 9th standard, because that was my breakthrough year as well. So till the 9th standard, I barely noticed. It was a thing of weekends and combining with the holidays. It's only after that I started to travel so much that it became a problem.
Was there anyone when you were growing up that you admired? Someone was your mentor, someone you aspired to be like in your particular profession? Was there anyone else who inspired you to be able to play chess at this incredibly high level?
I was always inspired by Michael Tal, and so it was a coincidence that was the name of the chess club. I liked Bobby Fischer as well. I cannot say that I followed him in chess or in sports or in tennis or anything, but I really liked McEnroe. So back then, he was the one person. I liked him, though I can't say why, but he was just...
Interesting. I mean, if you picked tennis, I would have expected you to say a Federer or a Borg or, someone of that nature. But McEnroe, just kind of off your personality.
That's true. Maybe that's what I liked about him. So
when you look back at your career and you started to get good as you went along, were you increasing your work ethic? Were you increasing your discipline in chess? Were you increasing the amount of time you spent in preparation to face these challenges?
Yes, I would say that the workload gradually started to increase, almost imperceptibly because it's gradual, but the amount of time I was spending thinking about chess and reading. But most of the time I was self-taught, in the sense that I taught myself by playing chess. Because this infrastructure of coaches and trainers and even just availability of material was so limited in those days in comparison to today. I mean, nowadays there's just so many resources online. A lot of things are messed up in your head till you play a few times, and then you suddenly get this clarity, because that pressure, the tension at the board is very hard to recreate otherwise.
When you get into chess battle, and obviously you go in with a plan and plan A and plan B, as you would do in most individual sports, does it kind of hit you at some point in that game that this is now a difficult moment or it's slipping away? And at that particular moment in time, what do you rely on?
I've often had this feeling that I make a move, and then the realization that I've done something wrong comes a second later. And then I can literally tell you, it feels like a shiver in my spine. You suddenly have this feeling, what have I done? Because you understand that now the position has suddenly become critical. And then the usual technique is to stay as calm as possible. Because the first thing is, maybe your opponent hasn't picked up on it. So you shouldn't, by your body language or even your breathing, you shouldn't somehow convey that information to him. You try to stay as calm as possible. And always you see the position very objectively. You can start off with the attitude, okay, now I'm lost. So mentally I'll chalk up the 0 at the scoreboard. And then let's see, maybe I will still try to fight and maybe I'll get lucky. And that can be a bonus. So the sequence would go something like, I might have been winning before, but after this blunder, I'm losing. So now even a half point is a bonus, because you adjust to the new situation very fast. And this is a very important skill, because it's one of the most critical skills in chess. If you've gone 2 hours thinking you're going to win, and then suddenly the tables have turned completely, the recommended approach is to be so cold and almost surgical and say, well, those 2 hours didn't happen. I'm now lost, and this is the point I'm starting. Or you can reverse this. You could have been lost, but you'll feel a bit down, and then suddenly the tables can turn in your favor. So the thing is, any unexpected change in result, you must always deal with the current situation. And there are people who are outstanding in this. I would say I was good in it. But there are people who do it much better. I mean, Karpov, for instance, I was always amazed by how quickly he could change to the current situation, no matter what. There are others who are just so emotional that it takes them a while, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before they can, get used to the new thing.
So, Vishy, you talked about Bobby Fischer, and obviously at the time the big match was Spassky Fischer. At that time, it was worldwide phenomenon, almost like an Ali Frazier fight in boxing, and McEnroe Borg in tennis finals at Wimbledon, and so on. When you look back at those kinds of guys who played chess well before you, do you see an analogy? Do you see a comparison between the way you play today and the way they played, the way they faced their challenges when it appeared to them?
Definitely. In fact, when you play them, when you eventually get to play them, it almost feels surprising to you that you can guess almost every move that they make, because you grew up with their games. They're so familiar to you, whereas they have a problem adjusting to you because you're an unknown quantity to them. But in the other direction, whenever I played these legends, I played Spassky a couple of times. I almost had the feeling that some of his moves I was guessing too easily, and you don't realize what the effect of having so many years of growing up with these games does. But chess is a process of constantly learning from old games, and it's a question about having a database of solutions. There will always be new problems, and players are constantly solving problems at the board. And if you learn that, then your base of ready-made solutions to problems thing, and each time it will be a slight deviation from the original solution, but based on the original solution, you can find the idea much faster. So that's how you learn.
What does it take to prepare for a big match? How would you kind of get into it right from the beginning till right up until the match?
Well, there is the general work that you need to do constantly. So that broadly defined as skills. You need to be able to solve certain chess problems which appear constantly. But before a tournament, assuming you've been constantly tuning your skills, before a tournament, you target your preparation for the opponents, the potential opponents you're going to have. So if you have 10 opponents, then what you'll do is you'll try to draw a grid. What could happen if I have the white pieces against them? What could happen if I have the black pieces against them? But since many of them might share the same openings or the same area, things that you expect to happen, it's not necessarily 20. There'll be fewer problems, but you'll then try to do specific surprises for each person. Basically pose them some kind of unusual problem that they might not be able to solve at the board. That's what you're looking for. Chances are the problem you pose won't stand up to scrutiny forever, but during the game you want to give yourself that little advantage, unsettle them, bring them into something unfamiliar that they're not comfortable with, and then that increases your chances of winning. Again, in order to be able to prepare for someone in a very targeted way, you must be aware of everything that's going on. So to give you an example, if I'm playing a certain line, if I'm specializing in a certain line now, then a potential opponent should understand enough about that line to be able to guess what it is I'm aiming for, what I'm looking for on that line, and then he can try and ambush me there. And for me, it goes in reverse. I would assume that that's where he would be. So I'm going to try and I'll keep on looking at all my material and see where would he try and wait. And it's essentially a guessing game because chess is too vast to cover in depth. So if you guess what your opponent is going to do that day and you double check on that, that is 50% of it. Because you've given yourself a huge advantage is that you've brushed up that area. So then you remember all the details very well because that's the area you expect and so on. But typically you'll make a lot of these guesses and most of them will be wrong. So getting that guess right is most of it.
Is it fair to believe that when you go up against an opponent, that there are only that many options that are on the table? Like, for example, when you play someone in tennis, there are the weaknesses that you look forward to and some game fits into the other person's game, so you kind of know what the other guy does. Okay, backhand, most of the time he goes down the line, cross court, and so on and so forth. Whereas in chess, is there an analogy to it, a comparison to it?
I would say it's almost exactly the same. People have certain skills. Some people are good in defensive situations. Some people are good when they have to attack the enemy king. Some people are good in just shuffling their pieces around while constantly keeping some pressure. Some people lose concentration very fast in positions where there's not much happening. Some people are very good when the number of pieces on the board drops. Some people only work in complex positions with a lot of pieces, things like this. And so it's very much that. And people are pretty fixed. Most of the time, most of their life. But just like tennis players will work on certain areas and try to maybe practice a new shot or anticipate certain thing. We also are changing ever so slightly. So even if someone is broadly fixed, you'll still have to pay attention to the details. So somebody may work on a new area and do something that he never did before. And if he worked hard enough for a while, he'll be able to at least fake it. So you need to be ready for that. But otherwise, I think the analogy is very good because it's very similar, the process.
So you've had a long career, obviously, in this great sport, and you've played numerous opponents over the years in different venues and situations. Discuss some of your opponents. Let's start with the toughest opponent as far as you are concerned.
Well, recently, of course, it's been Carlsen. He's half my age, so just 2 generations apart. In chess, you can roughly divide chess eras into the pre-computer era and the post-computer era, because the effect of the computer has been that strong. So the thing is with a lot of modern players is they have grown up with nothing but the computer. And as a result, their style is heavily influenced by it, whether they are trying to use it or trying to avoid it. Nonetheless, their style is being influenced heavily by that. So I think Carlsen really represents this new way of playing chess in that he's very tactically accurate. So clearly, even subconsciously, the computer's accuracy has rubbed off a bit on him. So it's important to see the right moves, but it's also important to know that you've seen the right move and to stop. And he combines that very well. Then with my generation, the players that were tough were Kasparov, Kramnik, Topolov. Kasparov, of course, was one generation removed. So he was 6-7 years older than the three of us. And Topolov and Kramnik are 6 years junior. But if you take Kasparov, then I played a match with him in 1995. And he was a difficult opponent, first of all, because at that time, we somehow, because the split in the chess world and things like that, never really got to meet him in a match after that. But he was definitely a difficult opponent. He was much more narrow than, let's say, Carlsen. But this was old world Soviet chess school, that sort of thing. He knew how to organize his work and work on it systematically. And this you could see both in his preparation at home and at the board, is that he had a way to solve problems, which was straightforward, that is understand, but hard to counter. But the one person who drove him nuts was Kramnik. So that's how it worked out. Kramnik and Topolov, I would say it was more back and forth. There were some years I was a difficult opponent for them, and some years they were difficult opponents for me. But it worked out well in that the 2 years that I had to play the matches against them, I turned out to be very difficult for them. So that was nice. Their styles and mine evolved in tandem. So very often I could see that I was learning something from them, and the next time I would see that they had been working on something that I do well, and we kind of grew up together. You can also include Gelfand in this. And I think right now I'm really working on learning all these new things that have come up. And this year I've had some very good results. I'm happy with the way it's going.
So Vishen, working towards world championships, you ended up working with Kasparov and Kramnik as your aides in it. How was that experience when you got someone with you who you've played so many matches against?
That was one of the strangest things I've ever experienced, because it wasn't all arranged before. It kind of just happened there. And I would say it's a mixture of motives. A mixture of reasons why they did it. With Kasparov, as it turned out, he wanted me to help him with the elections that he was going to be in later. And he would call in occasionally, usually on Skype, and then just say, do you need any suggestions or directions that I can point you in, and so on. And we would send him a list of problems. He would then check against his own notes and say this and that. Definitely helpful. And, you sit and talk to an old rival and he's on your side. That's a boost. But the real surprise was Kramnik, because he did all that, where I think with him is 3 different reasons. One is he had slightly testy relations with Topolov, actually quite bad relations. So I don't think that he was motivated by revenge only. I think that was for him a bonus. Second thing is we were good friends, but again, I don't think that's the full reason. I think what happened was that I started to play his repertoire against Topolov. For some reason, I decided that his match strategy against Topolov was perfect. And so I almost copied it. But I was not doing it very well. So I think he just thought, okay, I can't take this anymore. I'm going to call him and tell him how to do this properly. So some of these end games, he saw that I had not picked up on all the details. And he called me and said, I can help you. And he gave us a couple of directions the first time. Then a couple of days later, he said, we sent him back our impressions. And always, even in areas that you're very good at, if you let other people have a look, they will have interesting impressions. You don't know if they're right or wrong, but they'll point you in new directions. So we started to look at that. So my routine was I would sit with the team from the time my game finished till about 11 or 11:30. Then I would go to sleep and come back the next morning to see the final results. The team would often work through the night. So they would work till all the problems are solved. This could be till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or sometimes even till 5 o'clock in the morning. And then they would try to catch some sleep while I played. So that was the way it broke up. And a couple of days I would come and say, actually, Kramnik was Skyping with us the whole night. And he was working till 5 minutes. Now, that is a level of commitment that's unheard of. I mean, I can very often imagine myself, if someone asks me for a bit of help, I might stop by and spend a few minutes. And in fact, I've been so grateful to him that I would count him now as one of my closest friends in the world of chess. This was the first time we were interacting so deeply, and I got to know them very well. And you can include Carlsen a little bit in this. He wasn't working for me during the match, but before the match, he offered to be a sparring partner for a few days just to train me. Unfortunately, this may have given him more insight into me than I would have liked, but I also got some insight into him and so on.
Now, at the age that you're at now, how difficult how different is it for you to prepare today, both physically and mentally, to play a big match?
It's definitely a factor in the background because things which are easy suddenly are not that easy. I compensate by doing a lot of physical training. This is important because when you're sitting there, you need this clarity. And for that, you need your brain to be working well without tiring. The moment you tire, you start to have doubts and everything gets muddled. So I do a lot of physical training. But the most important thing is familiarity with chess. You think that you could have relied on all the stuff that you've learned so far. But what I've discovered is that in a problem which used to be solved in a certain way, even if I solved it effortlessly before, if the way you solve it has evolved a bit and there are a couple of new twists, suddenly that unsettles you and you have to go through that drill again. So even though I would say I'm not learning something I've never heard of, there are enough tweaks that I need to apply my mind and get familiar with it because our understanding of the game is also changing and improving. So the way we do things keeps evolving and you need to constantly brush up on that. Because what you want at the board is not to waste any time on problems that have already been solved. You want to keep your head as fresh as possible for the problems that you might not have solved before, because that you'll need to apply your full creativity. And the second thing is, the more you practice these drills and the more these existing skills become second nature, the easier it is to solve the new ones. So it's about maintaining this level constantly.
So I came and watched you when you played Carlsen in Chennai. I was in the audience. And I watched it actually from the very first row, which was quite an impressive thing for me to even watch behind those glass doors and both of you concentrating so heavily on it. How big was it for you to play that World Championship match in your hometown of Chennai?
I was thrilled. I mean, it's in a way, because so much of my career has been outside, I wanted Chennai to have one big event where they could see what chess is all about. And I was very thrilled when the Chief Minister, Jayalalitha, had bid for the event. And we knew she was going to do what it took to get it here. And the event was organized brilliantly. I mean, it's one of the worst matches I've played. And it coincided with a moment when I was having just difficulty with my form. And I mean, a lot of the things I mentioned came after that. The way I played that match, I realized that I had to find a way to get past this inability to cope with these new problems, that I started working a lot again. I was working very hard before, but somehow the work seemed to be misdirected because I was not benefiting from it. Whereas subsequently, I feel it's gone a bit smoother. So there's a bit of regret that when the big moment came to Chennai, I was not able to play the way I would have liked. But still, there are many people in Chennai who talk about this match. And I realized for them, they were for the first time able to see chess in a way that, well, you just can't catch online. And that meant a lot to me.
Exactly. For all chess fans in India, and especially in Chennai, it was a great boost for the sport itself. Okay, so we're going to digress from your chess and talk about your other hobbies. And it's amazing to learn that one of your hobbies is astronomy, which I'm yet to meet someone with a hobby, it's astronomy, and I guess the first question is why and how.
When I was very young, I grew up with this book of Carl Sagan, Cosmos. So that's kind of where my interest in the subject is. I also remember with my cousins, we used to sit and discuss stuff like, was there life on Venus? Was there life on Mars? Could we do this? So not really science fiction, but sort of in that area. And we were interested in the subject. And then I forgot about it for a long time. The thing is, astronomy is sort of thing where you need some equipment, you need to be able to set it up, and that's how it used to be. And you used to have these charts where you could map the sky, and they'd give you a dial where you could see which star would be there in which month, and all this kind of stuff. And then many years later, some news item or something came which stirred my interest in the subject again. And then I went online because this had happened in the meantime. And I discovered that it's suddenly a lot of the things that it had become effortless, to put it this way. You can see you just have to put your location and you get the entire sky for the next 100 years or whatever it is. The other thing was there was so much material to read online that even if you just wanted to read and check your favorite questions, you could find it effortlessly. So I started to get into it again. And again, some new tools helped. So I got my wife bought me for my birthday in 2005. She bought me a set of binoculars. But the important thing is this had image stabilization, which meant that instead of your hand shaking, suddenly you just click it and boom. That I remember going out and seeing Orion, and for the first time I could see Jupiter with the moons and so on. And this was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. The second thing is a few years later, I got access. There's a friend who was also interested in chess, but he runs, how shall I put it, something like Rent a Telescope. It's called iTelescope. And what they do is they have very, very good telescopes set up in several locations around the world. Australia, Spain, and New Mexico. So by location, that means that it's night somewhere at any given moment. And you could select a target online, take a high quality image. So instead of you setting up your own telescope, setting up the camera and taking an image, which is quite tedious, I suddenly found this effortless. So things like that. It just that it was an old love of mine. And suddenly I came back to it and I discovered it had become very, very easy and fun to do. And I like it. On top of that, it's been a fantastic time. We're sending probes to Saturn, to Pluto, to this moon, that moon. It's become so much fun.
So, just reading on all of your accolades, which obviously we followed over the years, and which I'm so glad that, the government has recognized athletes in this great country of ours and at the highest level. But one thing I've not heard of is a planet being named after someone. And I think that's quite unique. I was trying to think back and see whether I met someone who has a planet named after him. And a planet has been called 4538 Viswanathan.
That's right.
And can you identify the planet? Can you actually look at it through your telescope?
It's rather small for that. So it's in the asteroid belt, and it's rather small for that. But I can track it in real time because if you enter the coordinates, I can see exactly where it is. And I can tell you that it has a surface temperature of like minus 230 degrees. So it's rather cold out there. And it reflects rather more than, objects of its class. But, which is why it's so cold. It's reflecting heat away. But I was thrilled to death. I mean, there was a chess fan who was working in a sort of minor planet center, or was collaborating with them, and he proposed my name. And after a while, it got accepted. And it's really nice. My son can also tell you the number. So he knows that it's 4538. That number he knows very well, and I'm very proud of that.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now, a couple of final questions, Vishy. If you had to tell kids in this country now learning chess, obviously there's so many more tools, as you rightly pointed out. not just chess, but sport in general, and how they would want to make a career out of it?
I would just tell them this: don't rush that thought too much. I mean, it's very nice to dream of being a professional, but why do you want to take that decision early? So just play your sport for fun. Try to get better at it. Try to attain targets just for the fun of it. I mean, there's some deep satisfaction in setting a goal and attaining it after a while. That's wonderful. And don't give up school or take such, let's say, harsh decisions very early. And a point will come when you can make that decision more relaxed. I mean, this point may come at the age of 16, may come at 18. Whenever it comes, you'll know. But the important thing is to first feel that this is what you really want to do. The titles and the fame is glamorous. The actual grind might not be. And you might not, something that you enjoy thoroughly as a hobby might not be something that you find yourself obliged to do. So that is the only thing I would say is to, don't rush that bit. There are people who think something is wonderful because they have tried it. And then once they've given up all the other career options, if that's the only thing they can do, it doesn't feel the same way. Just practice often, get better at it. And one day you'll know if it's the right option. But keep in mind that nowadays it is much easier to have an unusual career. You don't have to explain it quite so much. And your parents are probably open to the idea. So it's wonderful that in India, sports in general, avenues have opened up. But just focus on the sport for a while and getting better.
And finally, what would you say is your defining moment in pursuit of excellence?
I think it's the moment I get to the board. So I was feeling that the whole morning before a game, I often I'm just tense and worried the whole time because I'm thinking of all the things that could happen and all the things my opponent could do and things like that. And that's when I don't have much control. But I keep reminding myself, but when I get to the board, I will calm down. And funnily enough, when I get to the board, that's when I calm down because there's no way back. This is the moment the game starts. And you start to relax. And for me, it's almost liberating because after the whole morning has been worn me down, I find that it's just liberating to get to the board and realize that I can stop worrying about all the things that might happen and deal with the one thing that does. That moment is very important. And when I've managed to take that attitude further, I mean, in the morning itself, if I tell myself most things won't happen, just breathe easy and calm down, that's when things really work out. So for me, the pursuit of excellence, it's really about staying calm and realizing that most of the things you worry about never happen.
Vishy, wonderful talking to you. All the very best. Bring back the World Championships.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to see you.
You can also watch this episode online at louisphilippe.com.